In this video, I'm going to talk about TET holiday in Vietnam, but not really from a cultural or educational point of view, but from our point of view and what I think travelers need to know when it comes to considering renting a motorbike during TET or near the dates of TET. Let's get started. TET holiday is sort of the equivalent of Christmas for Westerners, but honestly, it is done on a much bigger scale. Christmas and New Year is sort of spread out, and companies can, for example, let an employee work on Christmas but have New Year's off. A bit of flexibility and roster covering, basically. But with TET, the dates are very strict. In particular, there are 3 main days of TET where absolutely no one in the country will work. In short, the entire country shuts down on a scale that no Westerner can understand. As the years go by and the clear damage to the economy that is done by TET becomes apparent, it is noticeable that TET is becoming a bit more flexible and less serious, but it is still extreme beyond what you can imagine. TET tends to happen around late January to early February. The actual dates of TET change each year, and companies have to wait for the government to decide on the exact dates. Even after the TET dates have been announced, there is often confusion from companies about how to deal with the dates and how long staff members should really be allowed off. Whilst TET is around 10 days long, it can often be a very last-minute decision from a company about how they process this information and if the staff do actually get 10 days off. So what actually happens during TET? A simplified version is that the entire country goes home. Most of Vietnam's working population is in the big cities, but actually the hometowns are in the countryside. Imagine, if you will, millions and millions of people leaving a city at exactly the same time to go home to the countryside. Traffic jams are huge, and trust me when I say that public transport such as trains and internal flights have absolutely no problem jacking the price up to 3 or 4 times the normal rates. The government attempts to control this each year, but without success, and it is always a news headline when a flight that normally costs $50 suddenly becomes $400. The tradition of TET is basically, in a nutshell, to spend time with your family. The culture is to go around relative houses one by one and pay a visit. In my time doing TET, I could visit up to 10 family houses in a single day. The custom of most host houses is to offer up a beer or 2. This means, purely out of etiquette and politeness, by the time the day is done, I've consumed some 20 beers. Vietnam has had massive crackdowns in 2024 on drink driving, with a zero-tolerance policy. And it will actually be quite interesting to see how this affects TET traditions of alcohol consumption. But at least up to this point, drink driving is an enormous problem during TET and a legitimate safety hazard to any tourist driving around the streets at the time. Let's talk about TET from a motorbike rental standpoint. Mechanic shops shut down for roughly around 10 days, and definitely on the 3 main days. And no, they won't open the shop to deal with your flat tire. Even a flat tire becomes a seriously big problem during TET. Gas stations, from my experience, actually stay open quite well, but it is very hit and miss. Hotels are often open, but quadruple the price. Restaurants are also very hit and miss, and certainly in the countryside, it will be hard to find food. Normally, Vietnam is an extremely easy country to travel by motorbike. The locals are just so helpful, and there are mechanics everywhere. This is partly why the motorbike rental industry has continued to grow to what it is today. It is also what allows tourists who are not really motorbikers or adventure seekers to travel this country by motorbike without problems. This all changes during TET, and you will not get any help. For a hardened adventure motorbiker who knows how to fix a flat, has all the tools, then it's okay. But for your backpacker pretending to be an adventure seeker, life can start to fall apart very quickly if something goes wrong in TET. From our perspective, on a normal day, we are a hero company that sort of has solutions to any problem you can throw at us. From flat tires to crashes, we can, to a certain degree, rescue you from whatever mess you might get yourself into. During TET, all of our helpful weapons are put on hold, and all we can do is shrug our shoulders and basically say, sorry, there's nothing we can do. And this can be for something as simple as a flat tire. Every single year, despite all our disclaimers, we pick up negative reviews during TET for our crappy service. And if you look at negative reviews of any industry in Vietnam, hotels, restaurants, whatever, you will see that most negative reviews have occurred during late January to mid-February dates. This is TET. Foreigners just don't get it. The damage of TET, in my opinion, is roughly 10 days before TET dates and roughly 10 days after TET, meaning the country struggles to function to some degree for roughly 30 days. You can still travel directly after TET or directly before TET, but you will find services are limited and perhaps not what they should or could be. For Tigit in 2024, we are still pondering how to process TET and the final decision has not been made. We might entirely shut during TET this year. For us, TET is such a panic from tourists that we rent out every single bike directly before TET and directly after TET, meaning there is basically no benefit for us to actually be open in TET. One of the big problems of renting a motorbike in TET is that if we rent out a lemon of a bike with a simple problem, maybe you're unhappy that the indicator doesn't work, well, we can't do anything about it. It just sets a rental relationship off onto the wrong foot. Usually, for our shop to function, we have mechanics, runaround staff, and admin staff. It's a pretty complicated system. During TET, whatever staff finds themselves working has to be qualified enough to some degree to fill every role. These staff members are rare, and generally an accountant isn't very good at test driving motorbikes, and mechanics don't speak English. You get the idea. Customer service is kind of brought to its knees. What I do know is that if we are open during TET, we will be limiting it to bookings with a minimum of 10 days of rent. But in general, if your travel dates are landing in TET, I strongly recommend you move them to a later date. One final thing on this topic is companies in Vietnam, not just Tigit, have a really hard time getting staff to come back to work after TET. Vietnamese tend to go back to their hometowns and often never return, or sometimes they just delay the return. Part of it is simply waiting for the internal transport systems to reset back to normal prices. It means that directly after TET, the workforce we expect to come back doesn't actually come back. We are experienced enough to deal with this at this point, but what it does mean is that there is a continued service limitation upon the reopening of the shop after TET. Overall, TET is an amazing family-based movement and one massive celebration. For tourists in cruise control with days to spare and nothing to do, then TET can be a fantastic time. It can lead to a moment that a tourist might connect with a family and become a friend for life. It's a special time of year, that is for sure. But for a tourist on a schedule with a plan, TET is a serious problem. And for a business, be it a hotel, a tour company, or a restaurant, or Tigit, just being open during TET is a massive review risk and a customer service hassle. I hope this explains TET, and thanks for watching.